Let's talk about the new Australian independent horror movie, Talk to Me. Now, this one has been highly anticipated by many people. For one, it's from A24, which I just want to point out is not a struck company from the current writer's strike. So I don't want to say what's okay and not okay to talk about at this current point in time, but it's just more so what I feel comfortable promoting and talking about. A24 so far has complied with all of SAG-AFTRA's demands, so they are a great company to produce movies and work with as far as like making movies, from what it seems. I don't know. But also this movie is an Australian independent film, so it really doesn't apply to the same rules as it does here in the United States. Talk to Me follows a group of friends that discover how to conjure spirits by using an embalmed hand, and they soon become hooked on the new thrill until one of them unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. So this is done by Australian brothers Danny and Michael Philippa, who were originally YouTubers. They had the channel called Raka Raka, and this is their directorial debut. So this is the first movie, and it was bought for a lot of money from A24. Now, the reason why this one was so anticipated, I think, from horror fans, besides it coming from A24, which, you know, we love a good A24 horror movie over here. I think it was mostly the hype around this. Like the hype that I saw, especially on TikTok, of reviewers who saw this movie early were comparing it to that of Hereditary, which made me a little bit nervous going in because Hereditary is a movie that I've only seen the one time because it is very disturbing. So I was kind of preparing myself for something on that level. And then I also heard, obviously it's the scariest movie of the year, that it was disturbing, cruel, and relentless to the characters. Now that sounded promising to me, and I'm a little wimp now for some reason, postpartum. I'm very sensitive these days, so I was nervous, but I was also excited because I was like, ooh, this is gonna be so effective for me as long as it doesn't get too weird, you know what I mean? Then I'm gonna be good and I'm gonna love this movie. Now, firstly, we're gonna get into like specific thoughts later, but generally, I don't agree with those statements. Okay, I don't see it on the same level as Hereditary. Hereditary, like I said, is a one-time watch for me. I own it, working up the courage to watch it one more time because it's a really good movie. But Talk to Me, I could definitely rewatch. Like I would go to the theater right now and rewatch it. I think it doesn't have those same heavy feelings that Hereditary did, at least for me, comparing the two. And I'm only comparing the two because I saw other people say it was on the same level. So otherwise, you know, they're two separate movies done by different people. So really there's no comparison. But if we are comparing based on disturbing level, it doesn't get as disturbing, I think, as Hereditary. It doesn't have that heavy feeling of dread constantly, and I think the length of the movie has something to do with that. So Talk to Me is only an hour and a half long, and Hereditary is over 2 hours. So I wanted 2 hours of this movie. I wanted it to keep going because there is so much that needs to be fleshed out at the end. We'll get to specifics later, like I said. There were definitely moments that felt heavy and dreadful and like tense, oh my god, and disturbing. This movie is disturbing. I'm not saying it's not scary or disturbing or anything like that. It's just, is it on Hereditary level? Not to me. I will go so far as to say this is the best horror movie that has come out this year, hands down, no contest, but I would probably say that it would be one of my favorites regardless, no matter what other competition it had, but it doesn't have a lot of competition this year. This year's not a good year for horror, in my opinion. I haven't like been obsessed with a horror movie that's come out this year so far. You know what I mean? So for me, it is the best movie of the year, but there isn't like a ton of competition out there for this year. But that being said, if it came out last year, I'd still love it. It'd still be in my top. I will say it's also the scariest movie I've seen in a very long time. It takes, well, I don't want to say it takes a lot to get to me because nowadays it doesn't. And I definitely had to take a little mental rest for a minute. I'm working on like a Hostel franchise video, and I've still yet to watch Hostel 3, and that was kind of on the agenda, and I was like, you know, after Talk to Me, I'm gonna take a minute. I'm gonna take a beat and not watch Hostel right now. I can't watch something depraved and people being tortured in this current point in time. So I'm gonna wait on that until I recover a little bit from Talk to Me. So yes, it got to me. But again, horror what scares people, it's going to be different for everyone. So I don't know if this is going to be effective for everyone, but it is a supernatural horror. And that is my favorite kind of horror. And although there is gore and things, it leans more so on the supernatural side. And that's what really makes it scary. So this isn't disturbing in the sense of like a lot of gore and body count and there's just like people being mutilated. It's not really like that. There are moments. There's gore in this. I don't want to say it's gore-free by any means. Definitely gory, and there is some disturbing imagery, like body horror. So they don't shy away from the gore, but to me, it's way more than that. It's more unsettling than it is disturbing because of the gore. It's just unsettling to look at, feeling-wise, the things that are taking place, the events that are happening. That to me is a little bit more disturbing than like the visual. Also, I want to point out, because I like to bring this up when it's relevant, I actually didn't watch a trailer for this, so I think there's a dog. The dog is in the trailer, but I wanted to point out the dog is fine. It's not really a spoiler by any means. There's, you know, the dog's involved, but it's fine. It's, you know, no harm to the dog, I want to say. There is one scene towards the beginning with an injured kangaroo, and that's relevant to the plot. It's not for shock value, it's not unnecessary, but I just wanted to point that out in case you're sensitive to animal stuff. Okay, let's get into like all the things that I liked about it, and then we'll talk about things I didn't like, because like I say every time, it's not a perfect movie. This isn't a 5 out of 5 for me. It's about a 4 out of 5 for me. I loved it, but I wanted so much more from it, and we'll get into that in things I didn't like, but this is also spoiler free. I could probably do spoilers for this movie because there's a lot going on, especially towards the end, but we'll just keep it simple for now. Maybe if you want spoilers, I'll do a TikTok about it. So my favorite thing about this movie, of course, is the horror. The fact that it was so disturbing, and it really did get to me. There was only a handful of scenes, so I think that was what disappointed me. Like, I thought they were going to push it so much farther, and it was just at the right level for me personally, for my disturbing taste level, because as you know, I don't love shock value horror movies or like really disturbing stuff. That's not really my thing. So this was like right on the cusp for me as far as the style of disturbing nature that I like. But there wasn't enough of it. I feel like when people compare it to Hereditary, granted in Hereditary there's only a handful of scenes as well, but there's that overwhelming sense of dread and heaviness the entire time, and this one was kind of lacking that. I feel like it didn't maintain the dread throughout every scene or like throughout most of it, but the horror, so good. It was so effective. There was one scene specifically that I really wanted to cover my eyes. Like, I really wanted to look away because it was so unsettling to look at for so many reasons, and I thought that was really good. It was a really good scene. So I think it's hard to put into a lot of specifics as why this movie worked for me and why I liked it, because there were so many things that were done right about it. We had the sound production, the performances were great, so there's really nothing to criticize there, and I liked all of that. So in general, it's a really well-produced movie and really well done, well acted. Everyone was believable as a character. I really liked that. I feel like they all kind of had a little bit of depth to them. And it's really impressive because it only had a $4 million budget, which sounds like a lot of money, but in Hollywood, and like, well, I can't say Hollywood because it's not American, but in movie making, that's really not a ton of money, because Hereditary was made with $10 million, and even that's pretty small in terms of movie making. So it's impressive what they could do with the smaller budget, and I thought it worked really well. Like, everything about it was really well done. But the visuals were hands down the best part. Practical effects on point. Really, yeah, hard to look at sometimes. I feel like in general, this movie feels really original despite having a kind of cliche plot. I feel like the idea of like, oh, this spooky little game that we play unleashes evil spirits, a Ouija board situation, right? We've all seen kind of that play out before, but not really in this way. There have been I'm not going to say too much about the plot of specifics. It is general, but I'm not going to go into it just in case you want to explore that a little bit. But I will say that the major theme in this movie is grief. So that was a little bit hard to work with as someone who is going through grief as well, losing a parent. So that was a really interesting twist on it for me personally. But of course, we've seen similar things done before with that kind of concept, right? But despite that, of it not being super original plot-wise and like teens messing around with stuff they shouldn't be messing around with, it felt original, and the way it was all executed, it felt pretty original. Which does lead me actually to my first thing that I don't like. That's not everything I like about this movie, but like I said, I'm not gonna go into specifics about every single little thing because it was a well done movie. I liked it all. I liked the movie in general. Well, I don't like it all. We're gonna get into things I don't like. First off, it's a little goofy. It's a little goofy at times. Just like, you know, it's confirmed that this hand you can contact the dead through this hand, and it's like confirmed. It's not like a Ouija board situation where it's like, who's doing that? Is this real? There's no question. There's no question of reality. Is this real or not? And I didn't enjoy that as much because obviously they're being goofy with it. And I get that they're supposed to be like young and dumb and not making the best decisions. That's the whole point. Hence bring forth evil spirits, like obviously. But I just feel like if this was in reality, if it took place in reality, it'd be taken a little bit more seriously. Like you're actually looking at dead people and they're having a good time doing that. And I just don't know if that is realistic. So maybe that's just me, and like I would be the friend that's like, no guys, we cannot mess with this. This is messed up stuff. Do not do this. But they're all like, let's do it. And on that note, I would have liked it if it was a little bit more vague if it was real or not, or like maybe it only worked on some people and not others, and there were people who didn't believe that it was real. Like there was some sense of like mystery around this hand. I wish it was more vague in that sense, and like not everyone could see a ghost, you know, not everyone can make contact with the dead through this hand. I don't know if that would have worked, you know, but like I don't know if that would have been believable. But I just feel like there weren't any doubters in this movie. Like no one was doubting anything, any of this reality, and I feel like that's unrealistic. Like I don't know. Personally, I questioned some of the characters' decisions. Like sometimes it seemed like they acted a little out of character that weren't believable, but at the same time, they did feel like real people who aren't perfect. So although there are times where you don't like certain people, it's like that's kind of realistic in the sense that like there's not a protagonist that you're like 100% rooting for, you know what I mean? But I'm still like, why would they do that? Like, I don't know that they would do that, but you know, maybe they would. I don't know. I don't know them personally, you know? So I was surprised that people said that the ending was a little bit too vague, because I knew where it was gonna go. Like halfway through the movie, I knew what was going to happen as far as like the very ending and like the major events that take place. But maybe they're also talking about how there are like 100 unanswered questions left in the end of this movie, which honestly is fine. This is a movie that does not spoon feed the viewer. Like this is not over explained in any way, but there were a little bit too many things that were unanswered for me personally. Like I wish they would have answered a couple things in the end, because they went with plot points and then never went back to them or completed them. So just in a movie sense, it didn't work in that way, like towards the end. I liked all of the buildup. I liked all the visuals and the horror and everything like that. And I liked where the story was going, and they just didn't like finish it for me. So it was kind of like I was wanting a little bit more in the end of this movie. Just like, just a little bit. You don't need to like over explain anything, but there were definitely things that were not wrapped up. So like I said, I just thought this movie was too short. I thought it needed to be 2 hours long, and I wish it was, because the ending felt a little bit rushed, and they really could have dragged out the horror and the dread for this movie, because the tone kind of changes here and there, and it didn't like upkeep that level of horror. When the horror was actually happening, it was fantastic and I loved it. I'm obsessed with the visuals of this movie, like I said, but it didn't maintain. And I feel like if it was given an extra 30 minutes, it would have been a lot more balanced and better at, you know, lengthening everything and kind of answering those unanswered questions in the end. So those are my general thoughts on Talk to Me. Like I said, if I do spoilers, I might do a TikTok for that. Also posting Big Brother content this week. So go watch that on TikTok. Overall, really liked it. The sound design alone warrants a theater viewing, in my opinion. Like, I would recommend it to be watched in the theater just because the sound is that much more effective. And the visuals obviously are, I want to say, unrelenting, because they do not let you look away. They just are there and they're in your face. And I liked that. That was good. I would love to hear your thoughts on Talk to Me and the heavily anticipated horror movie of the year. A lot of people saying the best. I agree. I think no movie is going to top this. Personally, like, it was really, really good. And a great directorial debut as well from the Philippa brothers. I think it's a great first movie, and I'm happy to see what they do next. Like, I'm excited to see what they do next. I hope they stick with some horror as well, because it was really good. They get horror. They understand horror for sure. So yeah, leave your thoughts down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.